On the news, fresh crisis rocks presidential villa as First Lady accused Garba Shehu of compromise. Nigerian Senate calls for state of emergency on unemployment. And Myanmar leader appears before UN, rejects allegations of genocide. Many thanks for joining us on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. There seems to be fresh crisis brewing in Nigeria's presidential villa as the country's First Lady, Aisha Buhari, on Wednesday attacked spokesperson to the president, Garba Shehu, and a close relative of the president, Muhammadu Buhari, Daura. Aisha Buhari, in a personal statement sent to online print medium Daily Trust, accused Daura of directive of presidential spokesman Garba Shehu not to recognize her office. This, she said, was done without the consent of the president. President Buhari has now, before his election in 2015, said he would not allow for the office of the First Lady. However, after the president's re-election, Mrs. Buhari released a statement saying she should henceforth be referred to as the First Lady and her office as the office of the First Lady. But in a statement released on Wednesday, Mrs. Buhari accused Daura and Garba Shehu of undermining her office. She alleged that Garba Shehu has shifted his loyalty from the president to others who have no stake in the compact that the president signed with Nigerians in 2015 and 2019. Meanwhile, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has presided over the Federal Executive Council meeting held at the State House in Abuja. Osinbajo presided over the meeting following President Muhammadu Buhari's absence on a two-day walking trip to Egypt for the Aswan Summit on Peace Development. This is the third meeting the Vice President will be presiding over in the absence of the President. He took charge of the meeting on October 23, 2019, while President Muhammadu Buhari was in Sochi for the Russia-Africa Economic Summit. He also headed the meeting held on October 30th when the President traveled out of the country to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for the third session of the Future Investment Initiative. The growing rate of unemployment in the country has drawn the attention of the Nigerian Senate, who are now urging state and local governments to declare an emergency on the provision of employment to the youth of the country. The matter took center stage during plenary today at the Red Chamber, following a motion sponsored by former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu. In the motion, Ekweremadu noted that the most active percentage of the nation's population is forcefully caged by unemployment from participating in the economic development of their fatherland and from contributing towards gross domestic product. Following this, President of the Senate, Ahmad, urged the federal government through the Ministry of National Planning to put up mechanisms and programs that would provide employment for the teeming unemployed youth at all tiers of government.
Noting that a report published by National Bureau of Statistics in 2019 stated that Nigeria's unemployment rate stood at 23.1% of the workforce in the third quarter of 2019. Further note that a statement credited to Senator Chris Ngige, Minister of Labour and Productivity, and published in Premium Times of 9th November 2019, declared that Nigeria's unemployment rate will hit 33.5% by 2020. Worried that any nation with such number of unemployed but employable youths are only sitting on a keg of gunpowder.
Banks in Nigeria, they contributed in no small measure to the problem of unemployment in Nigeria. They refuse to give facilities to small-scale industries. Of course, when they see you as a politician, Nigerian banks are easily available to you, asking to siphon public funds and give to them. But you tell them to give you money to run business. Nigerian banks will not give it to you. The graduates are roaming the street. Some of them have ideas as to how to be self-employed. But the facilities are not just there for them.
The worst hit are the women. Most of them cannot get jobs. Most of the youths have read well. The girls, they've made first class. They have done well in school, but they're finding it difficult getting jobs. What they will do next is best left to the imagination. And that is the reason why we are in this dire situation.
Urge the federal, state and local governments to declare emergency on the provision of employment to the youth of Nigeria. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Urge the federal government through the Ministry of National Planning to put up a mechanism and program that will provide employment for our teeming unemployed graduates in all tiers of government. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Senate has received the 2020 statutory budget proposal of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, FCTA. President Muhammadu Buhari, in a letter dated December 10, 2019, and addressed to the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, requested the National Assembly to consider the 2020 budget proposal of the FCTA. Buhari, in his letter, explained that the request to the Senate was in compliance with Sections 121 and 299 of the 1999 Constitution as amended.
Dear distinguished Senate President, Federal Capital Territory FCT Abuja 2020 statutory budget proposal. Pursuant to Sections 121 and 299 of 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, I forward herewith the 2020 statutory budget proposal of the Federal Capital Territory Administration for the kind consideration and passage by the Senate. While hoping that this submission will receive the usual expeditious consideration of the Senate, please accept, distinguished Senate President, the assurances of my highest consideration.
To security matters now, the Nigeria Air Force, through the Air Task Force operation of Lafia Dole, has launched a new operation codenamed Rattlesnake against terrorist elements in the northeast. Spokesperson for the force, Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, announced this in a statement on Wednesday in Abuja. Daramola said the air interdiction operation, which commenced on Tuesday, would target selected locations within the northeast to further degrade remnants of the terrorists, as well as deny them safe haven and freedom of action. He further explained that the attacks were executed following a series of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions that showed the presence of a significant member of Boko Haram terrorist factors in a makeshift structures and buildings under trees spread across the two elements. He added that the operation led to the death of no fewer than 30 terrorists and the destruction of major hideouts used by the insurgents. Daramola also noted that the force will sustain its efforts to completely destroy all remnants of the terrorists in the northeast. Inspector General of Police Mohammed Adamu says the governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states were peaceful. This is despite video and reports stating that the election conducted on November 16 was marred by cases of violence, thuggery, ballot box snatching, and intimidation of voters as well as electoral officials. But speaking at the Independent National Electoral Commission Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security meeting in Abuja, the police boss said the polls were relatively peaceful. Adamu, who was represented by Bashir Makama, an Assistant Inspector General of Police, however, admitted that there is a need to improve election security. He also revealed that the police arrested at least 43 suspects in connection with violence and violation of electoral laws during the elections in the two states. In his remarks, Mahmoud Yakubu, INEC chairman, asked for proper identification of all police officers deployed in polling units to enable the commission to hold them responsible for the conduct of elections in those locations. Journalist and rights activist Agba Jalingo has asked the Federal High Court to reassign his case to another judge. Jalingo's demand is coming after Justice Simon Amobeda was caught in a leaked audio saying the journalist's life was in the hands of the court. The journalist says he wants to be reassigned because Justice Amobeda can no longer be trusted. Jalingo is currently standing trial on charges bordering on conspiracy, terrorism, treasonable felony, and an attempt to topple the government of the Cross River State. He was first arraigned in August following a story he published on how Governor Benedict Ayade of Cross River State allegedly approved and diverted 500 million naira meant for Cross River State Microfinance Bank. Nigerians at the grassroots have been charged to lead the fight against corruption by reviewing accepted social norms in the country. This was the submission of stakeholders at the launch of an anti-corruption report by the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. The report presented in Lagos, Nigeria, stated that corruption is slowly becoming an accepted practice in the country and might worsen if not properly addressed. This next report has more.
How do your everyday actions and activities contribute to corruption in our society? To better understand and answer this question, anti-graft group SERAP embarked on a study across the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. Through questionnaires and interviews with government, religious and community leaders, it came up with some answers, all of which make up this report being launched. Findings in the report are highlighted by the lead researcher.
About 80% of.
How do your everyday actions and activities contribute to corruption in our society? To better understand and answer this question, anti-graft group SERAP embarked on a study across the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. Through questionnaires and interviews with government, religious and community leaders, it came up with some answers, all of which make up this report being launched today. Key findings in the report are highlighted by the lead researcher.
About 80% of the population believe that wealth made out of corruption should be taken back by the government. So the implication is that
which these social norms can be corrected, one of which is a reward system for hard work.
more than 80% of the respondents believed that the Nigerian society does not appropriately reward people who are not corrupt. There are people out there who are good, who are straight, but the society does not seem to recognize them. One of the best ways first is to stigmatize wealth made out of corruption. Because if we don't stigmatize it, if we don't see it as something that is obnoxious, then we cannot move forward.
The 78-page report has been praised by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, which says data provided by the research will aid the anti-graft agency effectively carry out its functions.
One of the greatest challenges we've had in my experience in the fight against corruption has been the dearth of useful data. So I join my voice to say well done to Sarah. We look forward to reading the report, and I can guarantee you that it will be useful for us at the ICPC.
Oftentimes when the topic of corruption is discussed, the emphasis is usually placed on government and leaders. SERAP explains why it decided to take a different approach in addressing the issue.
Nigerians should own this fight. We should be fighting corruption from our own little ends. So if we do that, then we'll be making progress, rather than leave the matter to government entirely. Because we have seen that the government will only be trying, sometimes they are not sincere with what they say they are doing. So we have to continue on our own to say, this is the way we want this project to go, so that we make progress.
Under the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration, no fewer than 5 ex-governors have been convicted of corruption since 2015 to date. For SERAP, this war can yield better results if the searchlight is beamed at Nigerians at the grassroots level. Fidelea Aguncha, TV360, Lagos.
Meanwhile, back to the story of Agbajalingo. An update here reaching us confirms that Justice Simon Amobeda of the Calabar Division of the Federal High Court has recused himself from the case involving Agbajalingo. He actually, in a ruling, granted the prayers of the defendants, the journalists and rights activists facing trial for alleged acts of terrorism. And moving on now, the former Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Adeyemi Ikuforiji, has appeared before a federal high court in Lagos over alleged 338.8 million naira money laundering charges. Ikuforiji is charged alongside his former personal assistant, Oyebode Atoyebi. They were first arraigned on March 1st, 2012, before Justice Okechukwu Okeke on a 20-count charge bordering on misappropriation and money laundering. They had each pledged not guilty to the charges and were granted bail. The defendants were, however, subsequently rearranged before Justice Ibrahim Buba, following a reassignment of the case to several judges over time. The trial is now to begin afresh before a new judge, Justice Mohammed Liman. On Wednesday, Ekele Henacho appeared for the prosecution, while Dele Additional SAN appeared for the defendants. The amended 54 counts charge was read over to the defendants, and they both pleaded not guilty to the charges. The Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, the POA, has again affirmed its commitments to the welfare and well-being of vulnerable youth and widows of fallen heroes. On Wednesday in Abuja, the association graduated 66 students of the Batch 8 of the Depoa Skill Acquisition Center in various vocations. 21 of the graduates are widows, while 5 are vulnerable youth and the needy in the society. Representing the Chief of Defense Staff is Air Vice Marshal Abdullahi Kashimu, who pledged to galvanize support with a view to sustain the efforts of the POA.
A supportive role to members of the armed forces. You can see from the training today, we have 66 graduates and 21 of them are widows of our fallen heroes. So instead of these widows and their children living very pitiable lives, the POA has taken the initiative to enhance the training and giving them starter packs. That means they don't need any loan, they just start straight away. This is a very noble gesture. Like I said earlier, we're going to canvass for the POA to make sure individual organizations in the country can support the training and sponsor students or trainees to come and benefit from future exercises of this nature.
This kind of vocational training will help them to enhance their skills. It will also help them to become entrepreneurs by starting income-generated businesses, and also afford them to earn a living to sustain their families. This will, of course, enhance employability in Nigeria and add to the GDP of our dear country, Nigeria.
News Now will be right back after this break.
Mr. John! Mr. John! What is it now?
What is it?
Please turn down the volume of your music. It's too loud.
And how is that your business?
It is disturbing me. I can't sleep.
And the same way you are disturbing my right to good music and where I enjoy it. What's wrong with you? Is there another person complaining?
Maybe we thought that you have lost your mind. Are you having a party?
I'm just respecting you, sir. You remember I've paid my husband too.
You will not understand why we are complaining, because you do not care about other people except yourself. Look, the transformation we need in this country begins in this compound.
Yes, now.
From you, and I. This, your selfishness, is an offshoot of corruption. And corruption,
not in my country.
Go to your bank. Go.
Corruption not in my country.
Whilst the crash nurseries and universities provide for possessing the problem also
that the election have been postponed, and Nigerians have been reacting to that.
Local area of Lagos as early as 7 a.m. Some minutes past the incident has been managed.
Welcome back. We're now joined by Fidelia Aguncha for the latest business stories.
Thank you very much, Annetta. The Center for Social Justice says more than 300 billion naira could not be accounted for in the 2017 audit report. The center adds that this unfortunate scenario is because about 265 government agencies in Nigeria violated the fiscal and audit rules governing the operations of government accounts during the year under review. Director of the center, Eze Onyekpere, revealed this in Abuja while appraising the report recently released by the Auditor General of the Federation. He also faulted the delay in the release of the 2017 audit report 19 months after the end of the financial year to which it relates.
160 agencies defaulted in submission of audited accounts for 2016, while 265 agencies defaulted in submission for 2017. So we have a situation where instead of improving, the situation seems to be deteriorating, while 11 agencies have never submitted any financial statements since inception. The implication of the foregoing is that the incidence of defaults, instead of decreasing, is increasing. The key findings range from irregular expenditures to failure to remit surplus revenue to the Treasury, all running into billions of naira. Also notable was the continued failure in the implementation of international public sector accounting standards, IPSAS. Overall, the findings were indicative of significant weaknesses in expenditure control, accounting, financial reporting, and in the completeness and accuracy of consolidated financial statements. Responses to audit queries did not improve in the year under consideration. So essentially, what we have is a litany of woes, evidencing the poor management and unaccountability of the federal fiscal system.
Electricity workers nationwide, under the edges of the National Union of Electricity Employees, NUEE, have embarked on an indefinite strike to protest the failure of the federal government to resolve the lingering industrial crisis in the sector. Assistant Secretary General of the NUEE, Anthony Sule, who announced the development, says the group decided to down tools following the expiration of the 21-day ultimatum given to Minister of Power, Saleh Maman. The group has also staged a protest to the Ministry of Power to drive home their demands. Some of the unresolved issues are illegal transfer of union properties to power investors and the alleged refusal by some distribution companies, DISCOs, to remit deducted contributory pension of their members of staff to pension managers. Well, after this break, we'll review activities in the stock markets. Don't go away. Despite the market breadth closing negative with 14 losers and 12 gainers, the NSE recorded its first gain since the start of trading this month, as in the month of December, with a 0.19% boost in its value. Now, this uptrend is largely driven by gains posted by MTN Nigeria, which you can see right here, which was a toast of investors. Today, the shares of MTN surged by 2 naira to close at 118 naira, thereby recovering losses seen in previous trading session. It was closely followed by CNI Leasing, which got a boost of about 5 kobo, Flour Mills PLC and UBA taking the third and fourth spot on the gainers chart respectively. While on the downside, we can see the Stanbic IBTC leads the pack of 14 losers, dropping by 7 kobo. Guaranty Trust Bank is following the trail, taking the second spot on the losers chart. We can see Chelaram here and First Bank of Nigeria Holdings. Now, this means it was actually a bad trading day for the banking sector, as we can see 3 of its equities dominating the losers chart. Well, in summary, we can see that over 3 billion naira equities, that's more than 180 million of them transacted in 2,951 deals valued at 3.02 billion naira were exchanged during market active on the floor of the market today. But let's now move to the foreign scene. We can see it's still red just like it was yesterday. The FTSE, Dow and Nikkei are still falling. FTSE by 0.01%, Dow by 0.02%, and Nikkei by 0.07%. Well, that's it from the world of business. It's back to Annette.
Thank you, Fidelia. On foreign scene, Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi has defended her country against allegations of genocide at the United Nations International Court of Justice, ICJ. The case was filed by the Gambia, which alleged that Myanmar violated the 1948 Genocide Convention by committing atrocities against Muslim Rohingya during an army crackdown in 2017. Thousands of Rohingya were killed in the violence, with over 700,000 others fleeing to neighboring Bangladesh. But Myanmar's leader said the Gambia's claims are factually misleading. She argues that the military's clearance operations in Rakhine, where many Rohingya lived, were a justifiable response to acts of terrorism by rebels, and says its soldiers acted appropriately. Suu Kyi acknowledged that the army may have used force, but that it did not prove it was trying to wipe out the majority group. FIFA will take legal actions to recover an undue payment from its former president Sepp Blatter to ex-vice president Michael Platini. The World Governing Football's Body Governance Committee has advised the FIFA administration to take the necessary steps to recover the 2 million Swiss francs plus fines imposed on the pair when their cases were heard. The payment from Blatter to Platini was approved on January 18, 2011 and transferred to Platini from FIFA on February 1st of the same year. FIFA investigated the matter and established that the payment had no basis in contract and was to be considered an undue payment under its ethics rules. Both men were initially suspended for 8 years in December 2015, with both sanctions reduced to 6 years on appeal. And that's it on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. Do log on to our website at www.tv360nigeria.com for more updates. I am Annetta Philip. Bye for now.